Policy Research Associates presents class member interviews taken at the 2019 Trueblood Diversion Services Summit held in Seattle, Washington. Both men in this interview are class members and advocates for the Trueblood bill in Washington state. Both are seated in a large auditorium filled with empty seats, and they talk directly to the camera.
My name is Joshua Stuller. I'm a former inmate at the Chelan County Regional Justice Center and also a former patient at Eastern State Hospital. I'm a Trueblood class member.
My name is Jason Draghi. I'm a Trueblood class member, and I've been an advocate for Trueblood, working with Disability Rights of Washington and just trying to do as much as I can to help.
Trueblood is a class action lawsuit in Washington state that enforces a person's constitutional right to timely competence evaluation and restoration services. Class members are all people waiting in jail for court-ordered competency evaluation and restoration services. A result of the Trueblood settlement was legislation to improve the competence process and divert eligible individuals into treatment rather than criminal prosecution.
In 2014, I began experiencing psychosis, and I was arrested October 11th, 2015. I was charged with 7 counts of first-degree attempted murder for that writing. Spent almost 13 months in solitary confinement at the jail. Eventually reached a plea bargain of not guilty by reason of insanity, and spent a further year and 5 months at Eastern State Hospital. That was released March 8th of last year. Was introduced to Disability Rights Washington while I was in jail, and then reconnected with them after my release from Eastern State Hospital. And I'm a very, very strong advocate for this bill. After spending more than 45 days in incarceration, waiting for my competency evaluation, I learned about the Trueblood class action lawsuit and was able to make contact with Disability Rights of Washington and was able to become an advocate. I've been invited to go and speak at Pacific Lutheran University, to speak in front of 2 classes at the college there. I've been working in my community to try to help bring unity to the community, trying to incorporate the churches, trying to incorporate everybody. I have spoken in public on behalf of this bill. I testified before the legislature on March 20th of this year in favor of this bill, and it passed. And I was present May 9th when Governor Inslee signed it into law, and I was he named me Washingtonian of the day for that day and put the state of Washington pin on my shirt. We as individuals no longer have to sit back and say we are just one person, what can we do? We won't make a difference in the world. And I found my calling, I found my passion, I found what makes me, I found my drive, my purpose in life by offering myself to others. Like, I don't get anything out of helping myself, but when I can do something for somebody else, I get joy out of that. It helps me feel like I'm me and I'm doing what I was put here to do. Because not everybody who has gone through the same things that I and other class members have gone through have a voice. So I think that's the importance of being an advocate for this bill and getting it implemented, so that, not to sound cliche, but I don't want this to happen to anybody else that is suffering from a disability or mental illness, because it's extremely traumatic. As a class member, I can certainly relate to those who would prefer not to discuss such things, because this is by far and large the most traumatic thing that has ever happened to me. And I have
subsequently been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of the arrest, which could have been diverted had this law been in place back then in 2015, and also because of the year that I spent in a concrete cell by myself with nothing to keep me company except the voices that I was hearing. And what they were telling me was not pleasant at all, and I would not wish that on anybody.
I literally saw a guy while I was in there for 9 months go from Western State to the jail, from Western State to the jail, from Western State to the jail. And he didn't know why he was in jail. He didn't know why they kept moving him. He didn't know what he did, why he was there, when he was getting out. So that hurts me. That hurts my heart. When I'm in a single solitary cell and I'm hearing somebody, "Mom, help me, Mom, help me," and then 3 days later he ends up killing himself, and all the guards would come in, "Oh, don't even pay no attention to him," you know. Jail's not the place. Jail's not the place. Integrating behavioral health with mental health and everything, that's good, because that encompasses the full circle of that balance. But having Department of Corrections being the overseers of that is not the right choice either, because DOC, Department of Corrections, all they do to correct your behavior is put you in jail. So that eliminates the whole circle that we tried to avoid.
Well, first and foremost, there are pre-Trueblood and pre-2015, when I was arrested, there were laws that were in place that, in my case, were not followed, ignored. The decision made by law enforcement, the Wenatchee Police Department, was to have me arrested and charged excessively, because they told my parents that that was the only way that I was going to get the mental health help that I needed. They told my parents that the 72-hour hold, psychiatric hold, I was, quote, too smart for that, and I would have outsmarted the evaluators, and I would have been released after the 72 hours without any subsequent help.
Each person is an individual. Each person has their own characteristics. Each person certainly has the capability of changing, and there's a lot of good that can come from the structure that these diversion programs offer. I feel that there's a lot that isn't being looked at in considering these factors, and from my experience and from my firsthand, witnessing, people with mental health disabilities in jail are drastically declining with the lack of compassion. I mean, regardless of the services that are being offered or not offered, or the medications that are offered or not offered, but the fact that they're instantly recognized as an easy target.
I was arrested on my 27th birthday, October 11th of 2015. That day, my parents, my strongest advocates at that time, found my behavior to be alarming and made a call to the crisis line. The crisis line responder told them to hang on, and she would consult with her supervisor, and that she would call them back. Well, she consulted with her supervisor. Later I found out that this crisis line responder didn't even work in Washington State. They work out of state. So the crisis line responders supervisor told this lady to not call my folks back, but to instead call law enforcement. Truthfully, if they had known what would result from them calling the crisis line, then things would have ended entirely differently. But they thought that they were making the right move at the time by calling the crisis line. And when you call a crisis line, you expect to be evaluated by a DMHP or some other mental health professional to assess the person that is the subject of the phone call and determine if that person warrants involuntary commitment or not. My problem is that I had never verbally requested psychiatric hospitalization because I couldn't formulate the words. I didn't know how to ask for help. So anyway, I later found out that my parents had been doing a lot of homework and a lot of research on this while I was in jail. And they found out that the crisis intervention team in Chelan County doesn't work on weekends. So what that tells me is that I should have decided to become mentally ill and have a crisis on a Friday, preferably between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. So if that gives you an idea of why I'm scratching my head still to this day, and perhaps it gives you an idea of why I now have an additional diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder in addition to the other major mental illnesses that I have been diagnosed with in the past. So
we need to create preventative measures to be in place to have active services when a person asks for services, or be available when those services are sought out. I mean, a person comes into jail, they don't have the medication on them, and even if they do have it in the bottle on the medication, they have to order it from their own pharmacy to have the money terms figured out. But in all reality, it takes at bare minimum 7 to 14 days to have medication administered. And then from that point, they've already said, oh, they're suicidal, and they got put in the hole, and now anything they say isn't being recognized. For me to be seen in Pierce County Jail, I had to file grievances and appeals, and then go through Pierce County Alliance to talk to the director of the programs, to have them talk to mental health, to have mental health actually come and see me. And then when they came and saw me, they said, oh, well, you look like you're doing great. The whole time, I signed a consent of release of information the day I got booked in. Every time I kited them on the kiosk, they said, have you signed a consent of release of information? It might take 2 to 3 weeks. We need to have like a little chip on insurance cards, and just to have key essential factual information that can be updated, and so that when a person goes to jail, or when they go to the hospital, or when they go to the something, they don't have to wait for this program to link up with that program and off hours. And when a person doesn't get the services that they need at the times that they need them, when they're asking for help and they're crying out for help, that can't be just overlooked. You have to be able to have instant access. I mean, round the clock. You have to be able to go into a hospital, and if you don't have your medication, that they can give you what you're prescribed because you have your insurance card that says, hey, you just picked this up from the pharmacy a month ago and now you're out. I mean, there needs to be proper jail transitional services for medication. You have to be released with medication on person so that you're not then released out into the public without medication and left back at square one to start your recovery over, and then have to have no resources that are available at the time that you need them. And then it takes
3 to 5 visits before you can get a med provider to provide any medication. You go to the emergency room and they say, well, you don't seem like you're that much in crisis right now, but you will be tomorrow, but they still have to release you. There's a whole lot of things, but ideally it starts with making active involvement in each person's case individually. You have to, you have to be able to see the person for who they are. I've never known a prosecutor just come in and say, hey, I'm the prosecutor. How you doing today? How you feeling? It has to be with compassion. It has to be from the heart. It can't be just a job that somebody does to earn the living, because then it's just going to be corrupt as all could be. But, yeah. And past Trueblood class members that aren't being recognized as Trueblood class members or eligible for diversion support, whether they're in crisis at the moment or medicated, they're still in that revolving circle until they get that Trueblood services, until they get that wraparound service and the referrals necessary to acquire this wraparound service is only in jail, inside jail currently. So being out on bail myself, trying to get Trueblood because I was in jail, but unable to because I'm out of jail, being a past Trueblood class member, and yet I was denied. And I have my own service plan. I have my own, plan in place. I've got a support team like no other, and I'm in the active role to be making that progress forward. So
I think that it would be very important for politicians, for city officials, judges, sheriffs, to hold their employees accountable, and also to tell them, not to tell them, but to make it known that so many laws in this state, nationwide, are very subjective, not at all objective. And it was the subjective beliefs of the arresting personnel in my case that I was too smart to have been found mentally ill and to have been sent to a psychiatric facility. But there's so much that I could say to those officers. That's why I have vowed to, after this whole case is over, after our lawsuit against Chelan County is over, that I would like to sit down with them individually or as a group and ask them if they're willing to share it with me. But I would also like to sit down and tell them face to face that I forgive you.
So I just feel like there's a lot we can do to help integrate unity in the community and bring about a higher level of standard across the board and make a lasting positive change.
These interviews were conducted at the Trueblood Diversion Services Summit. For additional information and resources, please visit www.prainc.com. This video was produced by Policy Research Associates. Use of footage or audio from this video without permission is prohibited.